Hello everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday evening lecture at the Kabbalah.academy. We hope you guys are all doing well, and we're going to carry on with the article Matan Torah. As usual, we're on item 12, page 246 from this big, humongous Kabbalah for the Student book. So you can get this though on the website, it's not a problem. You can just download the articles as well, they're all free on the website. So as usual, we're going to carry on now. If you've got any questions, you're more than welcome to send them through. Last week we had several questions and it was rather a nice lesson. So the more interactive we are, the more fun the lesson also is, also for you and for me as well. And we can delve deeper into the article if we ask, if we have questions as well. So the article Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, and the giving of the Torah, and also it means actually the revelation of the Creator. Okay, so Matan Torah, although it means the giving of the Torah, Torah is light, and the giving of the light is also the revelation of the Creator to the created being. And that's what really the article is trying to tell us. And as we delved into it in the first lesson a little bit, went into it, and we started off the article with Baal HaSulam's sentence that Rabbi Akiva, the great Kabbalist, Rav Akiva, he said the greatest rule in spirituality, in Torah, which is spirituality, is love thy friend as thyself. So in order for a person to attain this state called godliness, or to be like the Creator, to be Adam, a person needs to get out of himself, his self-love, and has to care for others at least as much as he cares for himself. And the way to do that is to study the wisdom of Kabbalah, where we can actually delve into what human nature is. We can delve into what the general laws of nature are. And from those two opposite positions, we can begin to reconcile what we are to what we should be. And we can actually work towards changing ourselves, of course, always with the help of the light that surrounds us. We can't change our own nature. However, though, we can get help, just like children get help when they're small from their parents. A person who wants to change himself also gets help in the wisdom of Kabbalah from the Creator himself. And the whole purpose of life, as you know from the previous lessons, is to actually reveal the Creator while we live in this world. And our lack of desire, or let's say laziness to do so, brings about all kinds of bad things to the world. And recently we're experiencing the coronavirus. As you can see, one small virus is enough to show humanity how fragile we are, how not in control we are, how anything can just happen just like that and can really knock us out of the game, and how a small microbe, a microscopic thing, can just shut down our lives completely. So all these events in life should actually be, for us, for students of Kabbalah, it's a language, a dialogue between us and the Creator. So this dialogue needs to be deciphered by a student of Kabbalah so that he can actually direct him or herself towards the goal. And this coronavirus is a wake-up call for humanity. And this wake-up call means that we're going to have to change everything about how we live. And I mean everything. From economy to education, to our social relations, to all kinds of relations that we're in. Everything in life, we are going to have to change. And this is what the coronavirus is telling us, because we're not willing to change. So life says, well, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it for you. And the way I'll do it will be a bit harsh. Okay, it's like we tell our children once, twice, well, if they still carry on doing it, we have to shout, scream, and get cross at them. Right? Because there's only so much you can explain with a soft tongue. So same is with life. So life or creator, God, or nature, doesn't matter what you call it, is like a mum and dad. And so we have to sort ourselves out. Now, if you need to ask questions, all right, you can send emails. Let's just write those email addresses. Okay, or you can get questions from YouTube, right? Yes? Okay, so you can ask questions on YouTube as well. But if you want to send an email in the future as a question, if you remember to ask something, let's say tomorrow, you can ask it to, you can send it to Africa at, what is it? Kabbalah.academy. Academy. You can also send it to Asia at Kabbalah.academy. All right. Either way, we get these emails, and you can send us your questions, and we can get them answered. All right. And also, like I said, you can also ask these questions live on YouTube during the lesson. So let's get smashing about what Rabbi Akiva, this great Kabbalist, Rav Akiva actually, talked about. And Baal HaSulam is writing in this article, Matan Torah, page 246, the article Matan Torah, and it's item number 12. These were the words of our sages when they asked, why should the Creator mind whether one slaughters at the throat or at the back of the neck? After all, the precepts were given only to purify people, and that purifying means the cleansing of the turbid body, which is the purpose that emerges from the observation of all the Torah and mitzvot, of all the spiritual laws and corrections that a person needs to go through. Okay, so this is from a text that is way back. Okay, so it's quite an old text. But why is Baal HaSulam bringing it in? Because a Kabbalist really, every time he says something, every time he makes a statement, what he wants to do is he wants to refer it. Okay, he wants to make a reference point. He says, listen, our sages, Kabbalists from the old times, said this sentence, and now we want to talk about it simply because at our time it relates to us, and it relates to us in a specific way. So we need to learn it. So this is what he's saying. So in order for us to understand the sentence, basically they're saying, listen, what difference does it make what I do with my hands and legs? Because the whole idea of spirituality, or the whole idea of the wisdom of Kabbalah, was given to a person so that he can come to adhesion, or dvekut, to be like the Creator. That's the whole idea. So he's making a right statement. He's saying, well, even the old sages said, well, why do we need to do anything with our hands and legs in a specific way? Because the whole idea is to cleanse our desire to receive, which is called the beast, the animal, the body. Okay, so the body is known as the desire to receive for ourselves. We just want to correct that. So let's see what they're talking about. A wild ass shall be turned into man, because when one emerges out of the bosom of creation, one is utter filth and lowliness, meaning a multitude of self-love that is imprinted in him, whose every moment revolves solely around himself without a shred of bestowal upon others. So this is also another text from the past where the Kabbalists are saying, well, when we're all created, we're created like a wild animal. We're egoists. We're self-centered. We love ourselves. And as we grow more and more, we get older and older, we get more egoistic. So from our birth to everything, we're just egoists as we grow up as well. And there is not a gram of love or bestowal towards others in us. Not a gram. We're only willing to love others if we have a personal benefit. And if we don't, well, we don't. We don't want to love them. So we're very quick to change, partners, spouses. Everybody wants to get divorced. Everybody has, break up with their friendships, relationships. Everybody wants to, we quickly want to leave the firm we're working in. We're not like, our parents or grandparents. As the generation is becoming more and more, egoistic with every generation, we're more egoistic. So what happens is all the time, we're just completely centered and immersed in this self-centered way of life. And this is our nature. And this is our nature from the beginning. So there's nothing to really cry about. This is how we're created. And Kabbalists look at nature, they look at man and say, well, listen, this is how we're created. So the point of, that's not the big deal. The big deal is what we're going to do about it. Okay? Because if I'm created like this, that's a given, it's a given constant in a function. And there's nothing I can do about it. Right? So if that's given, within the given state, what does the person have to do to come to the purpose of life? So that's our question. With everything that we study in the wisdom of Kabbalah, we should always be asking ourselves that question. What do I need to do now in order to get to the purpose of life? So the reason they're bringing out these things in the article is, once again, to put in front of us our current state and, bring up the question, well, what are we going to do about it? Thus, then one is at the furthest distance from the root on the other end, since the root is all bestowal without hint of reception, whereas the newborn is in a state of complete self-reception without a hint of bestowal. Therefore, his situation is regarded as being at the lowest point of lowliness and filth in our human world. So our root that he's talking about here, which is pure bestowal, is the creator. And us, the created being, is complete self-reception. So there's the creator and there's the created being, one against the other, completely opposite. The more he grows, the more he receives from his environment portions of bestowal upon others, depending on the value and development in that environment. And then one is initiated into keeping the laws of spirituality and his corrections for the purpose of self-love, for reward in this world and the next world. This is called lo lishma, since he cannot be accustomed any other way. And as one grows, he is told how to keep the laws and his corrections for the sake of lishma, which is with an aim solely to bring contentment to his maker, which is the creator. So as Rambam said, when we start studying, people should be first told that they should be working for a reward. Okay? Because if we don't, we'll run away from it straight away. So when a person first comes to the wisdom of Kabbalah, the whole concept is, which is not a lie, it's actually truth. Okay? What do we say? We're always saying, well, we want to attain the creator. So if you attain the creator, you attain everything. And this is actually what man should be attaining. When I say man, I mean man, women as well, everybody, humanity, should be attaining. We should be attaining everything. And this is how it is. But that is still an egoistic state. Okay, so if the creator is bestowal and I'm self-reception, and we want to turn our self-reception into bestowal, we have to even change the way we start to study, but that's along the way. So it's a process. Just like a child, as he or she grows, according to the environment, becomes someone new every day and at every age. Same here. So as we study, we begin to have more understanding. And according to that understanding, we can actually start to feel that the change in our attitude and our intentions can actually occur during the study. And we can then become to do things, instead of for myself, which is lo lishma, I can start to do things for the creator, which is the state called lishma. Okay? So for that to happen though, we have to advance a little bit in spirituality so I can actually see who I'm doing the action towards. Right? Because I have to then have some kind of a revelation in front of me so I can decipher how I'm going to bestow. Because if I don't have anyone, if I don't know anyone, if I don't know the creator, how can I bestow to the creator? I can't, can I? So as we advance forward in spirituality, we should come to a state where we discover the creator And when we discover him, then we should be able to do an action towards him, because then we have a dialogue. Right? So from here you already understand how different the wisdom of Kabbalah is towards any corporeal teachings out there. In corporeality, you have to do things without knowing the Creator and assume that it's right. And that's a bad assumption, isn't it? You could be wasting your life like that forever. So the whole concept here in the wisdom of Kabbalah is we first start in concealment, where we don't feel the Creator. So we're studying in Lolishma. And then as we turn our nature, slowly, with the aid of the study, which is the Or Makif that we're attracting all the time as we study. Even now when we're studying, we're attracting Or Makif. And this Or Makif allows us to slightly, slowly, drop by drop, begin to change our attitude, change our perspective, the way we look at things and the way we want to do things. So our intention slowly goes through this transformation. And that transformation brings a person finally to Lishma, where he then comes to the revelation of the Creator. Then his intention can be for the Creator, because he sees the Creator, understands the Creator, he has a dialogue with the Creator as well. So let's carry on reading a bit more. So through the natural remedy of the engagement in spirituality and personal correction, which the giver of light, which is the Creator, knows, as our sages wrote, the Creator says, I have created the evil inclination, and I have created for it the Torah as a spice. So the Creator created us as evil, and he created a spice for it called light. So you might think, well, what's the point of us creating, what's the point of us being created evil if he's going to give us the spice for it as well? What's the whole concept here, right? What's the point? So it's the same question when we come to the wisdom of Kabbalah. What's the point of life? So as we delve into the articles, most of the time we'll say, well, why would the Creator do that? Why would he make us evil in the first place? Why should I be an egoistic, self-centered person according to my nature in the first place? Why not just be nice, be a nice guy, okay, in bestowal, and, have a great life? Obviously, the Creator knows something maybe we don't. Okay, so let's discover what we don't know. Thus, that creature develops and marches upward in degrees of the above spoken exaltedness until he loses all remnants of self-love, and all the corrections in his body rise. All the corrections, meaning all the bad intentions, turn into good intentions, and he performs all his actions only to bestow, even the necessity that he receives flows in the direction of bestowal, so he can bestow. And this is why our sages said, the precepts were given only to cleanse people with it. Precept also means a correction. All right, so it's obviously not talking about anything religious. A precept means a mitzvah, or a precept, a good deed. It means that I've corrected an egoistic desire and turned it into bestowal. So our body is our desire to receive pleasure. There's nothing we can do about it. This is our nature, and there's nothing bad with that. The bad is that I'm using it in order to be on top of others. So I'm using it to steal from others. I'm using it to get things and take things. I'm doing everything on the expense of others. So I'm actually using my desire to receive the things I want in such a way that it harms others. And that's the bad thing. Okay, so being a desire to receive pleasure is not a bad thing. If I'm not using my desire to receive to harm others, no problem. So the whole correction is actually the way we use the desire to receive. If I use it in order to bestow, then I'm actually fulfilling it with everything it wants, and I'm using it in order to bestow. I'm actually using my desire to give to others. So I'm getting everything, and then I'm like sharing everything. So I get and I give, I get and I give. Now, what's the benefit of that? This is what the correction should bring us. Well, first of all, you get to own everything. And because you're clothed with this love, by giving to others, you get so much pleasure. Imagine how happy you are when you give things to your children. Because you love them, or imagine someone you really love, right? So you love somebody, you go out and, well, you can't go out now, but think about the time when you could go out and buy somebody presents because all the shopping centers are now closed, okay? So imagine a time when the shopping centers were open and you could do shopping like a wild person, all right? And because you love them so much, you want to make them happy, you go and, buy them presents. Why? Because that's the action of love. When I love someone, I want to give. And for that, I'm really happy. So same here, when a person is clothed with this attribute of love, he is able to actually get everything from the Creator. And then because he's loving, he wants to give to others because of that love that he has for others, he's getting amazing fulfillment from it. And this fulfillment, because it's giving and it's not receiving, it never, it never really fills your vessel, which is great because you can be in that mode all the time. So you can be in complete happiness, you can be in complete perfection all the time because of that attribute, right? Normally though, because if we're receiving something, the moment I receive it, the desire and the pleasure cancel each other out. So I'm not left with any taste or anything. So imagine a state where you're constantly in this motion of giving and you're constantly in this fulfillment of having everything and giving everything because you have this attitude of love towards others. So the whole correction that we're actually going through is not because our desire to receive is bad. No, it's because we're using it egoistically. So instead of using it egoistically, I want to use it in a bestowing way, like the Creator. Then you become what this thing is called man, human, or Adam. And that's how you get to know the Creator. And that's the whole idea. Sometimes the books, because they're referring to books that were written like, ages ago, it's a little hard to understand. But a few of the articles from Baal Islam we really need to get our heads into so that we can understand these concepts. And in the future, when we read an article, then we'll understand what he's talking about. Because in these general articles, there's enough to get the gist of everything. So in the future, when we read a Rabash article and he's talking about a certain concept, we'll already know how to translate it into our spiritual development. Okay, so number 13. There are two parts in spirituality, in the Torah. Right? Two parts in the Torah, or the wisdom of Kabbalah. One is mitzvot, which is good deeds, precepts between man and God. And two, precepts between man and man. And they both aim for the same thing, to bring the creature to the final purpose of adhesion with the Creator. Furthermore, even the practical side in both of them is really one and the same, because when one performs an act in order to bestow without any mixture of self-love, meaning without finding any benefit for himself, then one does not feel any difference whether one is working to love one's friend or to love the Creator. Now that's really interesting, okay? Because Baal Islam really wants to clarify here one thing. If I have this attribute of love, if I'm clothed in this attribute of love, then it doesn't matter who's in front of me. I'm going to feel this proper relationship, way of relating with love to everyone in the same way. So if I'm just relating to specific people with love and to others not in such a loving way, it means I'm not loving. It means I'm self-centered, right? Because I'm treating people according to how I think is good for me. But loving, attaining the attribute of love is like the Creator. So that relationship towards everyone is the same thing. Okay? So loving another person and loving the Creator, according to what we just read, is the same thing. Which is very logical, because what we're attaining here is the attribute of the Creator. So if I have His attribute, how can I differentiate between people? Because I've attained an attribute called love, and from that attribute I'm relating to everything. Just like in life, currently we're egoistic. So we relate to everything in an egoistic way. So now imagine changing the attribute to the attribute of the Creator, which is love, and the act is bestowal. Then towards everyone I'd be behaving in that same way, wouldn't I? So all we have to do is just make this change, this little shift in our consciousness and in our, obviously, inner traits, and raise ourselves to a higher level where we relate to everything and everyone, the whole of reality actually, just like the Creator relates to whole of creation. Okay. This is so because it is natural. It is a natural law for any being that anything outside one's own body is regarded as unreal and empty. And any movement that a person makes to love another is performed with a reflected light, and some reward that will eventually return to him and serve him for his own good. Thus, such an act cannot be considered love of another, because it is judged by its end. It's like a rent that finally pays off. However, the act of renting is not considered love of another. But making any kind of movement only as a result of love of others without any spark of reflected light and no hope for any kind of self-gratification in return is completely impossible by nature. It's written in the Tikkunei Zohar about that with regard to the nations of the world, every grace that they do for themselves. So all of us, the way we act and do everything is always by default for self-benefit. So we can't do anything without self-benefit, without reflected light, without something shining on us. Either to profit from it or either to make ourselves feel good from it. There's no other way we can go about it. This is our nature. So the wisdom of Kabbalah allows us to discover that. That's the first thing we need to discover. That everything I do is for me. Once I discover that, I have to discover how bad that state is. Okay? And then we can talk about getting corrected. So here, he's opening up what truth is for us. And as we study the wisdom of Kabbalah, we should come to a state where we realize that, yeah, that is the case. Right? Currently, you may not agree with it, and you don't have to. The study of the wisdom of Kabbalah should bring a person to seeing the truth. And when you see the truth, then you can begin to see what the book is talking about. And as you begin to see and realize what the articles are talking about, then you begin to understand, this is what it's talking about. This is what's in me that it's specifically pointing to, and so on. Initially, the way we relate to these articles at the moment is just as a Kabbalistic text. So we want to understand what he's trying to explain to us. Afterwards, as we study in the group, what we want to do is to discover what he wrote. And that way, we'll begin to start making moves in our advancement. We'll start to take steps in that direction. This means that all the good deeds that they do, either towards their friends or towards their God, are not because of their love of others, but because of their love for themselves. And that is because it is completely unnatural. So no matter what we do, so people who are out there on the streets as well, they're saying, I'm doing things because I love humanity or I love God or whatever. But Islam says, no, that can't be. Because our nature is always doing things for self-benefit. I'm either doing good things to others because it makes me feel good, or, my consciousness doesn't let me just sit still. But that's still, making me feel good in any case. And in terms of, a lot of people running around saying, I love God and I'm doing things for God. I mean, when was the last time you sat down and had a chat with him? You don't know God. You don't know what he wants. All right, so all these people who run around doing silly things like that, it's because practicing self-love, not love of others. Therefore, only those who keep the study of the wisdom of Kabbalah and the precepts, which are corrections, are qualified for it, because by accustoming themselves to keeping their spiritual path and corrections in order to bring contentment to their Maker, they gradually depart from the bosom of the natural creation and acquire a second nature, being the above-mentioned love of others. So as we study and as we move towards more and more corrections, then what happens is the light that reforms begins to change us. Okay? So the more I desire to change and want to come to a future state where I want to find myself more balanced, I want to adapt myself to the Creator, the more I study to do that, the more I work in the group to do that, what happens is I'm actually pulling my future state forward towards myself. So I'm nearing it. And that's what the wisdom of Kabbalah does. Because at the end of the day, humanity's destiny is going to be still, one way or another, to get to the purpose of life. It can happen in a good way if we study. It'll happen in a bad way, like with all the things that are happening in the world, like, natural disasters. Now we've got the virus, all kinds of violence in society, drug abuse, depression, wars, all kinds of things. We can learn the hard way, or we can study and we can start learning in a positive way. And if we learn in a positive way, what the study does is it begins to change a person. And that is the whole objective of studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. This is what brought the sages of the Zohar to exclude the nations of the world from loving their fellow person when they said every act of grace that they do for themselves. Because they're not involved in keeping the wisdom of Kabbalah or Torah and the precepts in order to bestow. And the only reason they serve their gods is for reward and salvation in this world and in the next. Well, you can see that, can't you? A lot of people who practice many things on the outside, what do they want? They want a good life here, and then they want to go to heaven when they die. So what kind of a intention is that? What kind of an intention can that be? It's completely egoistic. I want to rob the Creator and fulfill all my desires here. Plus, I want to get the next world as well. So this is why in the Zohar they're saying everything they do, they just do for themselves. There's no love. There's no bestowal in those acts and actions at all. Thus their worship of their gods is because of self-love too, and they will never perform an action that is outside the boundaries of their own bodies, for which they will be able to lift themselves even a wisp above their basic nature. So there's nothing a person can do under those circumstances. If a person is carrying on living in that way, he's just never going to get out of himself. He's going to constantly remain in that egoistic, wild animal mode. And that kind of an animal always causes harm to the planet. It causes harms to other people. And constantly, actually, we're causing harm to each other because of our egoistic nature. All the bad things that happen actually to ourselves and to everybody else is simply because of our egoistic, self-centered nature. Now, the whole concept here is obviously as we study, we get to discover it. Because if you ask many people out there on the street, they'll say, wait a minute, I'm not an egoist. I love people. I love the planet. I'm like all for nature and stuff. Okay, well, what can I tell you? Okay, yeah. Unless it's revealed to a person, the person always thinks he's a nice guy. Even a killer on the loose, he's always got an excuse about why he committed a crime. Always. They always have an excuse. So a person by nature always likes to justify him or herself. It's our nature. But we also, in the wisdom of Kabbalah, obviously we can't, talk like the person out there on the street who has no idea of what nature is or his personal nature is. So in the wisdom of Kabbalah, as we study, what we'd like to do is get to know our nature more and more and more. And as we discover all the intricacies in it and delve into it, then we'll begin to pick off those things that are really harmful. We'll begin to correct them, and we'll begin to turn our study into a practical study where we can actually discover and fix the the bad things. Discover, fix it all the time. Left, right, and move forward in spirituality in that way. This is why a person has to have a dot in the heart. Prerequisite for the wisdom of Kabbalah. A person really needs to be asking himself, questioning himself about the meaning of life, why he's living, what's the purpose of it all. And as he comes to the study, then he begins to discover the purpose of life. And then in order to attain the purpose of life, he's now studying how to go through that transformation. Right? When I say he, I mean he and she. Okay, this is a study for everyone, so don't get me wrong. It's just, this is how I'm kind of used to explaining. But everybody's going through that self-transformation. He or she, men, women, everybody together. As we discover ourselves, we begin to discover what we want to change in ourselves in order to come to this state called the purpose of life, which is adhesion with the Creator. Right? And that's the whole objective. And that's everything. Okay, so Simon's asking, are the klipot and the evil inclination the same thing? That's right, they are actually. Klipot is called the shells, and it's like the skin of a fruit. Okay, it protects it. Well, it is actually the same thing. The skin of the fruit that actually helps to maintain the fruit. Our ego, although it's an evil inclination, it also helps us to keep ourselves safe. Okay, because ego works in two ways. It wants to get self-benefit, but it also functions as a system that tells me to stay away from harmful things. So it works in both ways. So the klipot is what we call the evil side of a person. So the desire to receive in order to receive self-fulfillment. And those things we need to discover along the way. All of the klipot, though, we have to understand, they're actually in the spiritual worlds. So at the moment, we're not really discovering klipot as we study the wisdom of Kabbalah. What we are beginning to discover as we study more and more is that we don't want to connect. Okay? The Kabbalists are saying we should connect, but you know what? I don't want to connect. Okay, that's what we're discovering at the moment. So as we study more and more, we'll come to the intensity of not wanting to connect, of seeing something in me that's like really against connecting with somebody else. Okay? But yep, you're right. So let's move on to item number 14. Thus we can clearly see that towards those who keep Torah, which is the wisdom of Kabbalah, and the precepts, lishma, which is in order to bestow, there's no difference between two parts of the Torah, even on the practical side. This is because before one accomplishes it, one is compelled to feel any act of bestowal, either towards another person or towards the Creator, as emptiness beyond conception. But through great effort, one slowly rises and attains a second nature, and then one attains the final goal, which is dvekut with him. Okay, so that's like telling us how this is going to happen. Let's read that again. Item 14. I'm just going to read it from the second sentence. This is because before one accomplishes it, one is compelled to feel any act of bestowal, either towards another person or towards the Creator, as emptiness beyond conception. But through great effort, one slowly rises and attains a second nature, and then one attains the final goal, which is dvekut with the Creator. So initially, this act of bestowing to us seems like a bit of mumbo-jumbo nonsense, but through great effort. Okay, so we've got to put some work in. Through the effort, one slowly rises and attains a second nature, and then one attains the final goal, which is dvekut with the Creator, which is adhesion. Right? So it's a process, as you can see, but life is a process. It's a process with everything. So we go to school, we learn the alphabet, we learn to read, we learn to write, we start using what we learned in real life and become a grown-up. So same for a Kabbalist. He comes, he studies, he understands, begins to, apply the things he understands, goes through this transformation, and then becomes like the Creator. It's the same thing. All right, so there's nothing new here. The laws of nature do not change. So there's nothing new under the sun either. This is a study procedure that allows a person to go through self-transformation. For those who want self-transformation. Normally people just want their lives to change. But a student of Kabbalah wants to bring about change to himself. In order, obviously, to become like the Creator, not for anything else. Since this is the case, it is reasonable to think that the part of the Torah that deals with man's relationship with his friend is more capable of bringing one to the desired goal. This is because the work in corrections between man and God is fixed and specific and is not demanding, and one becomes easily accustomed to it, and everything that is done out of habit is no longer useful. But the corrections or the precepts between man and man are changing and irregular, and demands surrounding him wherever he may turn. Hence, their cure is much more certain and their aim is closer. So, this is an important thing to understand. A group of people who want to correct themselves in order to come to this Creator's attribute obviously have a better chance if they start working amongst themselves. For one very good reason, the Creator is not around. How are you going to work with a Creator that you can't feel, perceive, understand, or don't know what he even wants from you? There's just no way of doing it. So by working in a group and trying to come to the love of others in a group, in a society, you're actually discovering all the things that are for and against this process. And that's actually where you begin to discover the things you need to change in yourself. Otherwise, how would you ever know what to change? So this concept of working between friends in order to love others and constantly working in that direction is first of all really far-fetched for someone who's on the outside. This is why he needs a dot in the heart. Nobody can even fathom. A person who doesn't have a dot in the heart, well, really, there's nothing to talk about because he's just not going to get the idea. He's just not going to feel the concept at all. So as long as as long as a person has a dot in the heart and is directed towards this, and he wants to move in this direction, then obviously when he starts to work, then he'll find and discover within himself what's against his nature, what's against what is against in him, what stops him from loving others. And these critical discoveries a person has to make, otherwise you'll never know what to work on. Otherwise anyone can go out and do anything for God. They're doing it for thousands of years. Imagine how crazy that is. Nobody knows where he is, what he wants, but they're crazy enough to think they do know, and they do it. All right, so we have to be a bit more solid in our work. It needs to be very solid, it needs to be very concrete, and it needs to show the person exactly what his nature is like. This is why working with a group of people is so rich, because you get all the irregular situations. Not one day is like the other. You're constantly interacting, intermingling, you're constantly in touch with other people. And so what's happening here is this complete irregular actions being done on you, where you can actually discover all kinds of things randomly or seemingly random. Okay, and these are things you can really work on in a concrete way. So number 15. Now we can understand the words of Hillel Hanassi to the proselyte, that the essence of spirituality is love thy friend as thyself. And the remaining 612 precepts are but an interpretation of it. And even the precepts between man and God are regarded as qualification for that precept, which is the final aim emerging from the Torah and the corrections. As our sages said, the Torah and the corrections were given only so as to cleanse a person. This is the cleansing of the body until one attains a second nature defined as love for others, meaning the one precept, love thy friend as thyself, which is the final aim of the work, after which one immediately attains adhesion with the Creator. But one must not wonder why it was not defined in the words, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. It's because indeed, with respect to a person who is still within the nature of creation, there is no difference between the love of God and the love of his fellow person. This is because anything that is not in him, that is not him, is unreal to him. And because that proselyte asked of Hillel Hanassi to explain to him the desired outcome of the Torah, the study, so his goal would be near, and he would not have to walk a long way, as he said, teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one leg. Hence, he defined it for him as love of his friend, because its aim is nearer and is revealed faster, since it is mistake-proof and is demanding. Okay, so Hillel gave a very nice little explanation to the person who wants to learn spirituality. Basically, he's saying, look, simply just tell me what I need to do. So Hillel says, great, don't do to others what you don't like done to yourself, or the same thing as love thy friend as thyself. Now go out and do it. What's the practical side of this is because he can actually do things and he can actually get feedback on everything he does. There is no way of getting any feedback when you do things towards the Creator in this plane of physical, corporeal actions. Because there's no feedback, there's no sensation, there's nothing going back and forth. But when you're doing work towards another person, when you're working with them to come to a state of love, then there's this interaction. And this interaction is constant feedback. And this constant feedback allows you to work all the time. So it is very demanding work. But it allows you to discover yourself completely. And the self-discovery is very, very important, because this is how we begin to see our nature, and then we'll want to change that nature. You can't really want to do anything with yourself unless you see and feel a great need for something to change. And if that change, doesn't seem apparent to you, if it's not obvious that you need to change something, you won't move. Because our human nature prefers, if I'm comfortable, I prefer not to do anything. So the study should constantly bring me these situations where it's highlighting to me. It's putting all these bad things in the closet under a limelight and saying, ooh, these are the things you've got to change with yourself. All right. So this is why working with another person is very important. It's demanding, but it's true. It makes you see the truth, because you can't lie to yourself about what's immediately in front of you. All right, so let's take a look at number 16, but Simon's got another question. Can you explain in item 14, there's no difference between the two parts of the Torah? What exactly are these two parts? Yes, the two parts of the Torah that he's talking about is one, when you're doing work towards your friends. Okay? Let's read that again and then I'll explain it. One of them is towards your friend, one of them is towards the Creator, and he says there's no difference between them. So let's read again in item 14. There we go, where are we? Okay, thus we can clearly see that towards those who keep the Torah and the precepts Lishma, there is no difference between two parts of the Torah, even on the practical side. So the two parts, let's write these down. Okay. So the first part is man working with man. All right? And the other one is man working towards the Creator. Now he's saying when you're in Lishma, Lishma means for the sake of the Creator. He says there's no difference. Okay, these are the two ways to work in the Torah. Torah's two paths. Okay, two paths of the Torah. Now remember, we've got to make sure we understand the sentence here. It says, thus we can clearly see that towards those who keep Torah and mitzvot, lishma, okay, so you want to keep spirituality lishma, which means in order to bestow. If you are in order to bestow, if you are in this state, okay, there is no difference between doing something towards another person or doing it towards the Creator, which is actually what I meant when I said if you clothe yourself with the attribute of love and bestowal, which is the Creator's attribute, then what happens is you're always acting through that attribute. So there's nothing really, you can't act in any other way. Okay? So in our world, when we're in an egoistic nature, we're always taking egoistically. But if we're in a state of spirituality, which is what lishma is, okay, because it's in order to bestow, then it doesn't matter who is in front of me. I'm always going to treat them the same, the Creator or somebody else. It doesn't matter. Okay, so until we get to lishma, until we get to the revelation of the Creator, until we clothe ourselves with the attribute of love and bestowal, Hillel says, listen, because you're not there yet, you're not there in spirituality yet, you've got to work with who you can see. So Hillel says, don't worry about working towards the Creator at the moment, because he's nowhere in your perception. He's not in your radar. So Hillel says, listen, if you want to work properly at your state currently, okay, without any spiritual attainment at the moment, you're starting fresh, you have to work on the principle of love thy friend as thyself. Love thy friend, okay, as thyself. So this is the concept. Why? Because your friend is right in your face. He's always in your face. So you always have work to do. Second of all, you always have the discernment whether you want to do this or not. All right? This is why seeing what's in front of you is always very important. Otherwise, a person who's not in lishma, who's not in order to bestow, running around thinking he's doing things for the Creator is a joke. And that kind of bad joke you get outside, as you know. So for a person's spiritual attainment or work to start off really concrete, understandable, feelable, completely measurable, that's where you need the friends with. That's where you need the friends to work with. And that's why Hillel made that statement. So he said to the person who wants to learn spirituality, he said, love thy friend as thyself. And the rest is detail. Okay? So those are the two parts in the Torah, but these two parts are when a person attains spirituality. Until he attains spirituality, the person has no other choice but to work with the friends. There is no other choice. Working towards the Creator would just be a lie. I could say to myself all day I'm doing everything for the Creator, and then I can what? I can steal, kill. You see what people do on the outside. So a person's change of attribute brings him to a state where he's relating to everything that happens and everyone and everything in reality becomes like the Creator. I hope that was meaningful. If it's still not understood, let me know, Simon, and then we'll see how we can go. All right, we'll see how we go forward. If there's something not understood, let me know. Number 16. In the above words, we find a way to understand our concept from above about the contents of that precept, love thy friend as thyself. How the study compels us to do something that cannot be done. Okay, so above it said man can't do any change to his nature. Right? We can't change our nature. So he's asking a nice question here. Well, if I can't change my nature, why is the Creator asking me to change my nature? What's the deal? Indeed, know that for this reason, the study or the Torah was not given to our holy fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but was held until the exodus from Egypt, when they came out and became a whole nation of 600,000 men of 20 years of age or more. For then each member of the nation was asked if he agreed to that exalted work. And once each and every one in the nation agreed to it in heart and soul and said, "We will do and we will hear," it then became possible to keep the whole of the Torah, and that which was previously impossible became possible. This is because it is certain that if 600,000 men abandon their work for the satisfaction of their own needs and worry about nothing but standing guard, so their friends will never lack a thing, and moreover, that they will keep it with a mighty love, with their very heart and soul, in the full meaning of the precept, "Love thy friend as thyself," then it is beyond doubt that no man of the nation will need to worry about his own well-being. Because of that, he becomes completely free of securing his own survival and can easily keep the mitzvah, the precept, "Love thy friend as thyself," obeying all the conditions given in item 3 and 4. After all, why would he worry about his own survival when 600,000 loyal lovers stand by, ready with great care to make sure he lacks nothing of his needs? Therefore, once all the members of the nation agreed, they were immediately given the Torah, because now they were capable of keeping it. But before they have multiplied into a whole nation, and certainly during the time of the fathers who were unique in the land, they were not qualified to truly keep the Torah in its desirable form. This is because with a small number of people, it is impossible to even begin with engagement in mitzvot between man and man to the extent of "love thy friend as thyself," as we have explained in items 3 and 4. This is why they were not given the Torah. So now he explains to us what's this concept of Matan Torah, okay? Why it was given at a specific period and not before. Now he's explaining it to us in a nice way. He's saying we need a group of people. Like he says here, 600,000 people, right? If I've got friends around me, obviously 600,000, we know we're not talking about having a group 600,000, okay? It's just it's an allegory, all right? Let's put it that way. So in Egypt, there were 600 people who came out and they wanted to keep this law, "Love thy friend as thyself." It's an allegory, but what we should be getting out of it is the main thing here, right? So in a group of people, when a person's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, what he wants to do is to leverage that group, and as he studies, wants to come to a state, wants to come to an understanding or a feeling, okay, a sensation where he can reconcile things with his mind, that if everybody's thinking about me, I have nothing to worry about. This concept is further down the line going to explain it to us in the Arvut article. But what he's saying is this: if I've got friends around me that really care for me, they really love me, and my interest is really like their own, then an environment influences the person in such a way that that person doesn't feel like he needs to think of himself. So that's the gist of the story that he's trying to tell us here in item 16. So a group of people that are unrelated, they're not family, okay? Because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were family. So if you're family, you've got this natural love. So, you can't give the Torah to people who already love each other. It's got to be a group of people who are not related. It's got to be a group of people who don't have a connection with each other. And what happens is they work together in order to love each other, despite all their differences, despite everything that's, they're completely unrelated. They don't know each other from the beginning. Same like that in the group as well. When people come, nobody knows each other. So all these different people who come to the group, they want to study, they want to move forward in spirituality, then as we study, what happens to us is we go through this inner transformation. And then as we begin to feel that I'm caring for the others, this mutual care is a sensation that brings about inside a person the feeling that he doesn't have to think about himself. And that sensation is received from the group. This is why group study is very important, because if I don't have friends to rely on, think of it like a family you don't have. If you don't have a family, you always have to look after yourself. Everything, you got to do everything yourself. So if you have a family that cares about you, they love you, then what? You got life a bit more easier, because if you fall, they're there to pick you up. So imagine if you got a really tight-knit group of friends, right? And you're all studying the wisdom of Kabbalah in order to come out of self-love. And if everybody's investing all they can to this endeavor, and then obviously what they want to do is get, the fruits of it. And the fruit is the sensation where we exist in such a way that from the connections that we have amongst us, I don't have a need to think about myself. Imagine how free that is. Because our whole day, our whole life, everything is always, I got to think about myself. I'm always thinking about myself. Imagine how free a person can feel when he doesn't have to think of himself at all. That is freedom. Okay? It's also called the freedom from the angel of death. All right, so that's item 16 over for us. And we've come to the end of our lesson today. We've done an hour together. And it's 10 p.m. here. So what we're going to do, we've stopped at item number 17. Okay? So we've stopped at item number 17. Next week, we'll carry on with that. If you have questions, like I said before, we'll probably finish this off next week. In fact, you know what? Let's finish it off now, because there's only one item left. Okay. Let's just do it. It'll take us 10 minutes. Let's just do it now, because otherwise, next week we can move on to the Arvut article. Okay, so let's do one more item. Item number 17. From all the above, we can understand one of the most perplexing phrases of our sages. All of Israel are responsible for one another. Now, Israel means anyone with a dot in the heart. Right? You guys already know that. So Israel comes from the word Yashar El. Anybody who has a dot in the heart and who has directed himself straight towards the Creator in order to attain the attribute of love and bestowal, that person is called Yashar El Yisrael, straight to the Creator. All right? So we're not talking about anyone with a passport or a religion. We're talking about a person who has a dot in the heart and has directed himself to attaining the attribute of the Creator. This seems to be completely unjust, for is it possible that if someone sins or commits a sin that upsets his Maker, and you have no acquaintance with him, the Creator will collect his debt from you? It's written, fathers shall not be put to death for children. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. So how can they say that you're responsible for the sin of even a complete stranger to whom you know neither him nor his whereabouts? And if that's not enough for you, Rav Elazar, the son of Rav Shimon, says, since the world is judged by its majority, and the individual is judged by its majority, if he performed one precept, happy is he, for he has sentenced the whole world to scale of merit. And if he committed one sin, woe unto him, for he has sentenced himself and the whole world to a scale of sin. As it is said, one sinner destroyeth much good. And Kabbalist Elazar, son of Rashbi, Shimon, has made me responsible for the whole world, since he thinks all the people in the world are responsible for one another, and each person brings merit or sin to the whole world with his deeds. This is twice as perplexing. But according to the above said, we can understand their words very simply. we have shown that each of the precepts revolves around that single precept called love thy friend as thyself. And we find that such a state can only exist in a whole nation whose every member agrees to it. So the whole nation is the group. All right, so we're not talking about a country. Pretty soon we'll talk about the whole world, because the whole world needs to be in that state. Life will bring us to that. As you can see, it's already bring us to all kinds of restrictions with the coronavirus. Life will push us and persuade us to be responsible, let's say. All right? And the only thing that we all have to do is actually, as a group of students studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, I'm not talking about the people on the outside, I'm just talking about the group of people who study the wisdom of Kabbalah. All of us in the group, we need to come to the state of love thy friend as thyself. When that happens, it means we're all in mutual agreement and we're all caring about each other, and that mutual care allows us actually to remain above our self-centered egoistic attitude. So the strength and the power we get from the group, from the society, acts like a masach, yeah? It acts like a screen. So if I use the environment correctly, I can begin to now be above myself. I can begin to restrict myself willingly in order to advance for the better. So attaining all those spiritual attributes like a screen, an intention to bestow, how to restrict things, all these things can only happen if I'm in that connection with the friends. Then I'm willing to make concessions. And upon those concessions, I can then bring a restriction, and then I can then bring an intention to bestow, and then bestow as well. All right, so all of those things are very much interrelated. This is why we need a group of friends to study the wisdom of Kabbalah together, so we can actually practice, try to practice at least, the love of friends. And from this, mutual practice, like we're working in a team all the time, then we can begin to actually discover all these little things that we have to smooth out, iron out, and kind of correct. And then we can move forward in our sensations towards a higher level of consciousness. Until we discover the depth of our nature, it's really impossible to advance in spirituality, because reality is from two opposite ends all the time. So as we study, we discover our attitudes against others. So instead of love, we begin to discover hate. But on top of that, what we can do is now start measuring and start doing things to build love on top of it. So this mutual group, this dynamic, this group dynamic, environment dynamics is very important for us to get a feel of what our nature is and how to overcome it together. And this could only be done together. So hopefully with that, and we don't have any more questions, we can say let's meet again next week. And hopefully, if nothing pops up unusual, all right, we're going to do the mutual guarantee article, the Arvut article on page 251. All right, from the same book, and we'll move forward. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this article. It's a very core article, and if you have time, go over it and try to digest it a bit more. You'll see how important it is on our path, and how we really need to delve into these Baal Islam articles in order to really feed from them. Actually, we need to feed off these articles. In the interim though, have a great day or an evening. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.